I cut out my family after how they acted towards my wife and child. After trying for a while and coming to the point where we were getting our fertility checked, my wife, 34F, and I, 32M, recently had a baby, March 2021. The birth didn't go to plan, like it's possible to plan a birth lull, and was traumatic for everyone involved. After 7 days in labor, my wife gave birth via emergency C-section to a healthy baby boy, and we were over the moon. Obviously this last 18 months have been pretty unusual given the global pandemic, so getting out and about to see friends and family has been difficult to say the least. That being said, by the time our son was 3 months old we managed to work our schedule so we could visit my parents, 62F, 56M, at least once a week, fitting it around all the other stuff we had going on as new parents. On one particular visit we were invited for Sunday dinner. I knew something was off when I spoke to my mother on the phone. You know what I'm talking about if your parents have ever spoken to you with that tone, like you're in trouble or have done something wrong. The next clue came when she asked me how we were. Mother: how's baby? Me: yeah, he's okay, a bit grizzly though, I think he's tired or teething. Mother: it's because you're picking him up too much. Immediately I was on the back foot and told her that if he's crying then it's for a reason, and of course we're gonna pick him up. I figured she was in a bad mood over something. No judgment from me, but my brother recently got caught with drugs in his wallet and it really shocked my parents, so I put it down to that. Fast forward to the following day when we go up to theirs for Sunday dinner. Everything starts as normal, greeting each other, hugs, kisses, etc., until my mother says the same thing again. You're picking him up too much. To which I respond with the exact same thing and brush it off as her still been in a bad mood. As we hadn't yet mastered the art of eating at the table with a 4-month-old, my wife and I decide to take it in turns to eat whilst the other one looks after the baby. My wife sits down with my dad and brother who are already at the table. I'm looking after our boy and my mother insists I get my dinner now while it's hot and that she'll look after him until we're finished. I sit next to my wife and start eating a delicious lamb dinner with all the trimmings. Yorkshire puddings, roasties, you name it, it's on there. I digress. Now, for those of you with kids, you may know where I'm coming from. The sound of crying is like nails on a chalkboard to most mothers. Particularly my wife, it goes through her and she can't fight the instinct to go to her distressed child and comfort him. Baby starts crying in my mother's arms, so she takes him outside to try and soothe him, but he just screams louder. My wife, who is really struggling with hearing her boy cry, gets up from the table and asks my dad to let her out. She was seated with her back to the wall and my dad was on the end of the table in a way that he would have to stand up and move to let her out. My dad, not wanting to interrupt his meal by standing up, politely tells her to sit down and that my mum will stop him crying soon and for my wife not to worry. I've got to admit I actually said the same thing to her and that she should eat her dinner while it's still warm and delicious. Crying continues. Wife gets up again and after having to ask more than once for him to let her out, he begrudgingly does. Here's where things go downhill. In the midst of her getting out from the table and retrieving our boy, some of the things he says next include: he's manipulating you. You've got A&E on speed dial. You're reading too many, baby, books. As soon as his tone changes I ask him what's going on and if something had happened before we arrived for him and my mum to be saying the things they're saying. Clearly they'd been talking about us when we weren't there. My wife explains that our son is only 4 months old and doesn't know how to manipulate, that we've taken him to A&E once for a valid reason, unexplained rash, and that despite having a shitload of baby books we haven't even had the time to read them. I try to intervene as they begin to argue further until my wife reaches her limit and says she's going home, getting visibly upset at this point and starts to leave. My dad then, in the most cringiest, childish way, starts going, "Okay, bye, see ya, bu bye," etc. I'm looking at him open-mouthed in shock, not quite believing how he's acting. My wife glares at him and says, "You know what, Dad? You're fucking horrible to me." With that his eyes bulge, he stands up and starts rolling his sleeves up like a man possessed and screams at my wife with his grandson in her arms. "Remember whose fucking house you're in." Been the closest. My brother, 23M, stands up to get between them and I jump up and clamber over the table to join him. My 4-month-old boy has never seen violence up until this point and I'm absolutely raging inside. I look at my dad and, somehow, calmly tell him he's a fucking bully and has been all his life, which only aggravates him further. Mother intervenes and shoos us out of the house saying things like, "You've had your say," and, "He's, my boy, gonna turn out great, to which I tell her it's nothing to do with her and they can all fuck off. I grab all our things and get my wife and boy in the car and take them home, all of us in pure shock. I texted my brother and mother later that night only to find that they'd taken my dad's side and that his actions were justified because they thought my wife's behavior was just as bad as my dad's. That was in July and we haven't spoken to them or been back. Since then my dad has blocked my wife on social media, absolute child, and we've, wife, baby and I, been in hospital with COVID. Luckily we're out now and are on the road to recovery. My mum tried calling the hospital when we were in there. I think to keep up appearances to the rest of the family that they give a shit about us, but because we weren't in touch she had no idea, and has texts every Thursday to see if we're okay and clear her conscience. I was texting back initially but I don't want to keep playing this game and acting like nothing happened. My wife and I have agreed we're not going up or taking our boy until we get an apology, which, knowing them, will never come. It's my dad's birthday today and I was considering going up and using it as an excuse to try and sort things out, but despite it eating away at me, family is sacred to me. Why should I be the one who has to bring the olive branch? TLDR, my dad was verbally aggressive to my wife and child. My mum and brother took his side, leaving us in total shock. I don't want to reply to texts from my mum or wish my dad a happy birthday until we get an apology. Remember that family is sacred to you. Your family is your wife and child, your extended family threatened them. What do you do to protect your family here, dude? So what's your question? Side note: you and your wife have every right to defend yourself. Letting an almost newborn cry it out is wrong. Your parents should have stayed in their lane. Your newborn child was crying and your parents wanted you to ignore it. Your parents are not the kindest people in the world and you are probably doing your child a great service by keeping him away from those grandparents. Focus on your family, your wife and child. Let your parents and brother figure out their own lives. You have a beautiful family to focus, let them focus on their toxic mess. So while your wife was upset about the crying and stuck in her seat, I do wish you had gone to get the baby, but that said, good, you should cut them out until they can apologize. Your primary family is your wife and child now. Even if you didn't have a wife and child, your father and mother are bullies. Just because they are your parents does not mean you owe them anything. Respect is earned, not given. Your parents need to get down on their hands and knees and sincerely apologize. If they don't, do not contact them. They did this to themselves. If a bully continues this behavior into adulthood, they should be cut off until they change. Your egg donor, yes, she is a bully as well, and sperm donor need to make the first move. Don't let them manipulate you with, "We are your child's grandparents, who deserve to be in his life, NFW. They have not earned it at this time. You did good, my friend." Now I would have responded a bit quicker with going to the baby. But if your father has the cojones to try and size up to a woman, then he has the cojones to get decked in the face. But I'm a vengeful bastard, so again, how you handled it was the best that you could do. I wouldn't contact them for a long while. Even if they did apologize. Edit. Cojones. You might worry now, but you're doing well, you're protecting your child. Family is sacred to you, so put the one you've created first. My 48F husband, 49M, said he is no longer attracted to me and wants to sleep with other women. My husband and I have been married for 12 years. We dated for 6 years prior. I am still very much in love with him, and I felt that he loved me as well. I know for a fact that we are each other's best friends. He says that to everybody, and it's the real deal behind closed doors as well. We both have a passion for real estate and have worked on a bunch of projects together. For years, I have always been the first person he consults on a lot of things, and he always asked me to accompany him to whatever things in business and otherwise he has to do because we keep each other company and he sees me as his calming influence. My husband is a corporate lawyer in NYC. After our daughter, 10, turned 5, we decided it was better to raise her and send her to school in a more suburban setting, so we moved from the city to a commuter town, bedroom community. We have a lot of friends and coworkers that live nearby. I work as a mortgage loan officer at a bank near our house. These past few years I started noticing a shift in how my husband treated me. He treated me with respect, we'd still go to parties and vacations together, and he'd always ask and value my advice on things. He also would always tell me he was proud of me and post complimentary messages about me on social media. However, I noticed that what years earlier had still been passionate love now was more distant. It became more of a he said those things because he was being respectful, rather than there being any source of romantic spark between us. We'd be out and I noticed he'd be looking at other women. Sometimes women would come up to him and he'd be flirtatious with them. I tried everything to help us reconnect. Date nights, weekend getaways. I lost 10 pounds and even paid a personal stylist to help me get a whole new wardrobe, including lingerie. My husband would reject any attempt I made at intimacy and also start trying to make excuses in order to get out of date nights, including saying that his friends always seemed to be having a crisis at their homes that he had to go help them with. He made a rather upsetting comment when my sister was complimenting me on my new body about how his friend's wife, 35F, could still fit in her wedding dress from 10 years ago effortlessly, and said, "Now that's commitment if only. Otherwise I guess why keep or buy such an expensive thing?" He later backtracked and said he meant more him and his tuxedo. He always rejects any overture for physical affection, to the point where he becomes distant if I even put my hand on his. He told me that his job was demanding he work longer hours and that he had looked into apartments in the city where he could work his late nights. When he said that, I instantly got a bad feeling because while people worked late, he was a partner and not even as an associate did he have to work to such a late hour that driving home was impractical. Then we go to a firm event to celebrate Founders Day. We were having a good time, but then my husband became distracted and couldn't keep his eyes off a woman. He then left our conversation and began acting flirtatiously towards the woman. His coworkers who I've known for a long time all gave me uncomfortable or pitying glances. When we got home from the event, I asked him if he was sleeping with the woman he spent the rest of the night around. He said he wasn't. Then we got in a fight about his suddenly longer work hours and I admitted that it hurts me that we haven't had sex or physical affection in close to 2 years despite my efforts. He then tells me that he loves me. He pauses because he basically snapped that he loved me. He then tells me that he didn't know how to say this to me, because he truly does love and care for me, but he's no longer attracted. And that he's made a great effort to deny that or relight that attraction he has for me. He told me that he still thinks of me as his forever partner, and respects me immensely. He admitted he was attracted to the woman I saw him talking to. She's 24 and very beautiful. But he told me he loves me as the mother of our daughter and emotionally speaking, I'm the only one he thinks he'll ever love. And that he'll always value my opinion above others. But he said that he's sure that he has also aged and gained weight, but that it's just what he feels. And he can't pinpoint a certain moment when it happened. He then asked me if there was a way we could work this out. And by work it out, he said he'd be discreet and never let anybody know about it, but he asked if he could sleep with other women if he could promise that he won't get emotionally attached. He said that sites that would match him with a college or grad student operate on a basis of not forming emotional attachments and that nothing would change in our relationship. That conversation devastated me. I've been looking at current pictures of us in hatred. I've been suffering from hormone problems for the past 4 years, which have caused my hair to become very brittle and increased my hair loss. My husband always liked long hair and I know he was disappointed when it became too hard to keep it long or thick. I also feel like standing next to my husband. I find my husband handsome, glowing even in confidence perhaps. And I just see ugly me without that glow. What do? I love my husband and I've spent so much money on creams and makeup, but my husband just didn't want a relationship with me sexually. And would rather even pay other women in their early to mid-20s for it. I truly think that to anybody else, they'd say that he was adoring and clearly has a good rapport with me. I don't know if I can lose my best friend. And truly I feel like every other aspect of my relationship is good. The fact he wants women half his age is disturbing and should tell you what's really going on here with his sweet talking and manipulation. Your husband had already checked out of your marriage and doesn't want back in. He made that evident when he denied all of your attempts to rekindle. I'm sorry to say it, but he is already having an affair. You deserve better. If you aren't also being sexually and romantically fulfilled by other men, then you are never going to be happy with this arrangement. What would you benefit from it? He is likely saying the sweet stuff just to avoid a messy divorce. Focus your energy on yourself. I only see 2 options. 1. Open the marriage and go find other men to date knowing your husband is just a legal partner. Nothing more. 2. Divorce him. Good luck. He is not respectful. He's a sad, little middle-aged man in a midlife crisis who wants to sleep with someone half his age to reinvigorate his ego. He thinks he can have better, because young and beautiful is the only better he's looking for right now. What a pathetic cliché. For someone who says he would be discreet, he couldn't even do that through one party. He was already indiscreet in front of all of his coworkers. If he's not already fucking that 24-year-old, he's fucking someone else. You need to go get tested for every STD available and tell him you're doing it and why. I'm so sorry that your life has been so shaken up. Get a good lawyer, take a kickboxing class to get out your pain and frustration, and start making a plan for the rest of your life. It's weird that he wants to have sex with girls over half his age. That should be a red flag to get the hell out of that relationship in and of itself. Not to mention, he's probably already seeing those girls anyway. Well, he wouldn't be acting like this if you were his best friend and respected you. I don't know if your state is no fault or not, but my guess is he is already having an affair. Time to find an attorney, one who he isn't friends with, to get your ducks in a row. Get financials together so he can't hide anything. Ati can help get proof of SN affair too if needed. Your husband is an asshole if we're being honest. It's one thing if he's no longer attracted to you, but he's also blatantly flirting with other women in front of your face and in front of others, and now just wants to go sleep with other people with no regard for you having a fulfilling life. So, if you want to keep your best friend, cool, but go speak with a good divorce lawyer and move out and find someone who appreciates you for all that you are. He's an asshole going through a midlife crisis and acting like a moron about it. I am so sorry, but this relationship might not be worth saving. It would be incredibly difficult to leave, I see that. But do you want your daughter to see you being treated this way and think it's okay? You both may think you could keep her dad's philandering a secret, but she'll find out. Kids always do. Dr. Wife left a dying patient to make our dinner date. 1 month later I still can't let it go. Hear me out, please. We're both junior doctors in our early 30s. Met in med school, married for just under 2 years. She's my best friend and love of my life. I know I am the same to her. Marriage as 2 young docs is tough but worth it. We juggle 80-90 hour work weeks, sometimes missing each other for days because of staggered shifts, night calls. But we make it work, and thankfully kids will not be in the picture. We know what our jobs demand of us and we signed up for them anyway. It's a hell of a ride and I'm so glad that I'm doing this with her, conquering life's challenges together. Here's what happened a month ago. It was a particularly tough week where we pretty much wouldn't be able to spend lucid hours with each other at all between Tuesday and Sunday, except for a 3-hour period on Thursday evening. So we decided that I would pick her up from work, we'd go somewhere nice for dinner, and then get to sleep on time before the next workday. That's a 10 p.m. bedtime. A nice, precious date night, a moment of calm and connection amidst the raging storm of work. I also want to give some professional context to what's about to happen. Technically you're off duty at 5 p.m. when you hand over to your night colleagues to follow up on urgent investigations or plans overnight and see new admissions, but that doesn't mean you leave at 5 p.m. Far from it. We hand over these things so that we can focus on finishing up the tasks that we can't hand over. Basically the stuff that's our responsibility as the primary physician. Typically we're only done with this at 7 or 7:30, but on a bad day it can be as late as 10 or 11 p.m. So if we've planned dinner after work, we're basically betting that we'll end on time, since it's never a guarantee. What do you do if a patient becomes very sick while you're officially off duty but you're still in the ward doing work? Technically it's not your responsibility and the night team will be called in to attend to the patient ASAP. But ethically that's not the oath we took. Off duty or not, your own patient or not, we're still doctors. If the code blue alarm sounds, we run to the patient immediately and do what's necessary to save a life, especially when every second counts in a cardiac arrest and the night team is 2 minutes away. This has happened multiple times to both of us and it's the worst feeling to be just about to head out the door when the bloody alarm goes off. But I know my duty. You just can't look the other way. My wife looked the other way that day. She was already running almost an hour late for our precious date, which we had been really looking forward to and hyping up via texts all day. And I was sitting in the parking lot waiting for her, frustrating of course, but I know what our jobs involve. When she finally got to the car, she was pale and looked a bit sick. Guilt and "don't talk to me about work" written all over her face. Didn't talk much during dinner. When I finally got her to tell me what was up, she said that the code alarm rang just as she was finishing up, and instead of running towards she ran away. Sneaked out of the ward before anyone noticed and ran downstairs to meet me for our date. I couldn't believe it. She left a critically ill patient for the sake of our fucking dinner date. Now I felt sick too. A month on, I haven't been the same with her. I understand that she made the choice because our little time together was precious, But I wouldn't have done the same, and I am absolutely judging the fuck out of her for it. That patient subsequently died, and while I don't blame her for it, I still think she screwed up that day. One of the things I respect the most about her is how dedicated she is to her patients and how she doesn't half-ass anything. This decision she made, even if she made it for my sake and for our marriage, has made me question her as a doctor and a person. I've lost some respect for her, and it's affecting my relationship and ability to connect with her. Please help, Reddit. I suspect I will get many comments telling me to get off my moral high horse. But I hope you will take the time to understand that this isn't just a job and I can't take this lightly. We even had a discussion a few years before our wedding where we agreed that we'd stop to attend to every road traffic accident that didn't already have EMS at the scene, even if we were on the way to our wedding and dressed in white. Did she forget that? Edited to include the specific help I am requesting. How to empathize with the decision my wife made. Stop judging her and feel connected to her again, if necessary. How to open up a conversation about this without being accusatory or making things worse. I don't know how she feels now, but she definitely felt guilty that night. Thank you. 1. Cardiac arrests aren't that difficult to run. An experienced floor tech could probably run one. 2. There were probably several doctors, other than your wife, who attended to that patient, not to mention the mid-levels and RNs. 3. The chance of good post-arrest outcome, even in hospital, is abysmal. To conclude, you know all these points are correct, and deep down you know that her presence at that code wouldn't have resulted in any measurable positive change in outcome for that patient. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you're overthinking this. You should probably have a sit-down convo with your wife where you both talk through your feelings. Might also be a good idea to involve a therapist, especially considering you're both so overworked and stressed. Nurse here. Her shift was over. She wasn't on call. There's plenty of team members in the hospital. It's her off time. No one, and I do mean no one, expects her to, or wants her to, stay late and be just one most unnecessary body in a code room. She signed out. Honestly, I love working with residents like your wife who understand there needs to be a work-life balance. We all find it creepy when residents think that the unit will implode without them present. We've got this. Codes are easy and scripted, and we will work with the on-call doctor. It's time for you to quit focusing on work and add some balance. And when you are done, leave. There were several other doctors going to that patient. She was off of work. She was probably very stressed, tired, and worried about the date. You can let this one slide. If you want to talk to her about this, I think starting with the question, "Are you burnt out and/or is something going on?" would be the best way to approach this. I get that you are both extremely committed to your job, but I can imagine that she really needed that dinner. Her soul needed that dinner. You sound as if you're blaming her when clearly she feels just as awful and guilty about it as you, if not more. Doesn't that seem a bit unfair? Also, the title of the post insinuated that this is a lot worse than what she actually ended up doing. The technical oath we take does put patients above all. However, logic reasons that you must be stable physically and mentally to do this. Making time for your husband falls under that category in my opinion. You are her family and she needs her family and she needs to allow time for family. She's a physician, but she's also human. That patient was in a hospital filled with on-duty staff that are capable of helping. Her responding to the code wouldn't have changed the outcome. Sometimes it's okay for us to take care of ourselves. If you stop doing that, you stop being able to take care of your patients. I'm going to assume your judgment of her is weighing on her as much as her own guilt. You have compassion and empathy for your patients. Find that same compassion and empathy for your partner. Can you just stop being a doctor and be a freaking husband? Simple. And while you are about it, get over your self-righteous, superior yourself. BF faked death and then called my reaction manipulative. Me and boyfriend, I'm 21 female, he's 24 male. Together for 3 years, live apart but have had plans to rent together soon. Everything perfect before this. Backstory: I have a history of self-harm. Have done since I was 11 years old. The last time I did it was 2 years ago. I have some brutal scars, but I'm doing much better and I'm in therapy. It's been a while since I even had the urge. My boyfriend had an ex before me who played mind games a lot. I feel it's relevant as he sometimes thinks I'm playing games when I'm not. For example, he was wary when we started dating that I would self-harm for attention or do it to punish him. His ex would threaten things like that if he ever left her. I haven't ever done this, and despite my struggles, I am pretty good with being patient and communicative. Until this, I considered us to have a really healthy relationship. Main story: boyfriend went out drinking with his friends. I usually hear from him as he gets home, 2 a.m.-ish, to let me know he is home and safe, but I didn't hear anything last night. I figured he just forgot, no biggie. I went to bed as normal. I woke up at 11 a.m. to a bunch of missed calls from his mother. They live together. I called her back and she texted at 1 p.m. that she couldn't talk. I was kinda worried and told her as much. She said my boyfriend didn't get home last night and was in a crash and didn't make it. This was super weird to me since I get on well with his mum and would never expect to be told this via text. After some more texting, I fully believed my boyfriend had passed away that morning, and I totally shut down. The people I live with were all out that day, so I was alone. Grief set in immediately and I had an extremely bad relapse on my self-harm. At that point I didn't even care. I was just hurting so much and my usual coping techniques just weren't doing their job. I listened to old voice notes of his and even sent one telling him how much I loved him through the most unhinged sobbing I've ever done. Well, he arrived at my house 20 lanes later saying it was a prank since he got into a small bump and thought I'd get mad about him driving drunk as well as about him mushing up his car a little, and him and his friends came up with this plan to just make me happy he was alright. So they took his mum's phone and the above happened. I obviously was thankful he wasn't dead. But I had a million other much stronger emotions. I was so angry he drove drunk. So angry he saw nothing wrong with it. Significant other angry that he would lie about something so serious. And absolutely heartbroken that he let me sit in grief for over an hour until I sent a voice note that made him feel bad. Plus lots of other things I'm still struggling to articulate. He found out I harmed and flew off the handle. He said I punished him and turned a harmless prank into something much more serious and ruined the joke of it. He said I was guilting him for having fun and now he can't trust I won't do it again. He even suggested I stay in hospital for my mental issues for a few weeks and crank up therapy. He said he can't leave me if he wants now or else I'll act like this, just like his ex. I am beyond hurt. I probably should look into therapy if I'm still resorting to it, I admit. But this was not an everyday bout of anxiety or even a breakup. I thought he had died. I am also very aware that his actions were massively shitty and he is being so manipulative in the aftermath. How is it a punishment if I thought he was dead? I absolutely would not react like this if he just broke up with me and I have never said or hinted at that. Not really sure what to do now. My gut tells me to leave him over this but I'm so unsure. Please listen to your gut. This is beyond horrible behavior, not a harmless prank. You deserve to be with someone who has compassion and respect for you. Holy fuck, leave him. This was not a harmless prank. He is a major asshole and idiot for both driving drunk and making you think he was dead. Tell him sorry, but you don't date ghosts. He was dead. You can't punish the dead. As it stands, if you didn't need therapy before, having this bullshit pulled on you unleashed all sorts of things in your head which require some working through. There are pranks and there are pranks, and there are pranks completely undeserving of the term. You weren't laughing before or after the revelation. In what world was this supposed to make you feel better? Go with your gut. Be done. There's no forgetting he did this, there's no forgetting how he made you feel. No decent partner does this. Wow. No, he is 100% the manipulative one. What a disgusting prank, convincing you that he was dead. How is that even harmless? That's clearly not harmless at all, and him trying to convince you that you are the manipulative one is just insane. Honestly, he sounds dangerous. I don't normally like to tell people to just hurry up and get out of that relationship, but this guy is clearly very bad news. And yeah, the drunk driving is a huge problem also. He sucks in this situation. And for the record, he sometimes thinks I'm playing mind games like his ex, tells me this is not an all-around otherwise healthy relationship. I'm sure it has some good, but it's not otherwise completely healthy. It's also very concerning to me that when he saw you self-harmed his reaction was to get upset with you. He couldn't empathize or sympathize with the self-harm. Or the thinking your boyfriend died. Or any of it. He can't admit he was wrong for any part of this, and that's enough to break up in my opinion. At least hold off on moving in together. Maybe you should get more therapy just for a bit to talk about this situation. This is beyond traumatic and you don't deserve that. What a sick joke. You need to break things off ASAP. He's toxic as Chernobyl, dump him. Your boyfriend is a horrible person. What he did shows deep character flaws. The drunk driving is bad enough, the more so because he knew it was wrong and chose to do it anyway. But the harmless prank. That's just mean. So disrespectful and inconsiderate, made all the more so by your personal history. And speaking of the accident, did he leave the scene of an accident while he was driving drunk? Or was he late getting home because he got a DUI?